Okay.
Okay.
I think I'm situated
All right.
now.
I think we're good. I think we're framed up.
Where do I look?
Me.
Nice.
Yes.
We're speaking, so I'm going to look at you.
Yeah. Don't pay too much attention to any of that stuff.
It's not, You're too young to know the Brady Bunch, aren't you?
No, I know the Brady
Do you know
Bunch.
Cindy Brady in the Red Light Fever episode where she was bragging because she got on the game show and she thought she was all hot? And then all she did was stare at the red light on the
Oh, yeah.
So I got a little bit of that. So hence the term red light fever, which I think came from that. Like jumping the shark from Happy Days. Cheers.
Cheers to that. Yes, here we are. Okay, cool. So I feel like you've unintentionally sort of took the wind out from my sails a bit, because normally I'm really good at not letting people know that I'm recording. And then,
I watch the podcast.
Now we could get like more of a natural beginning. But now
know what you do.
Yeah, but
I watch you. No.
So now I don't really know how to naturally start this in any sort of a way. You think I've done enough of these now at this point that I should know how to steer things. One thing that you aren't aware of that I intentionally did not tell you until we started recording is that this is episode 500 of my podcast.
Really?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
You are the 500th guest. Thank you for being here.
I'm so sorry, everyone, that you got the consolation prize on the 500th episode. That's awesome. Congratulations, and thanks so much for having me. It's really cool.
Yeah, thank you.
It's really cool. What an honor.
Thank you.
Cheers
for being here.
Cheers for 500.
Cheers.
Here's to 500 more.
Yeah, here's to 500 more, but not alcohol beverages.
Yes. I'm looking over there again. I'm sorry.
Red light syndrome.
Yeah.
Hello. Look at me. I'm right here. All right.
I'm nervous.
So, hey, it's a natural thing to be nervous. It's a human emotion.
It's okay
that you just need to embrace and lean into.
It's honest, if nothing else, I suppose. But you just said it's your 500th, and then I was like, oh goodness.
It's just a number.
Oh goodness.
It's just a number.
It's a huge number.
Yeah.
I think it's very cool.
But maybe in 10 more years, when I'm cresting on episode 1000, we'll be like, 500. That was nothing.
You will be. I will not be here.
That is not true.
I'll haunt the studio so I can be here.
I will say this. So I don't know what your experience is, which, oh, by the way, Metal Mary's on the show. Please make some noise. Woo! If you didn't already know, living legend as far as I'm concerned.
Just old, but I appreciate it.
So, speaking of being old and inevitably dying, which is something that we will all do one day, I do not have any experience in my 4 decades of life on this planet with the paranormal. Nothing has really ever happened to me. I know there are some people that have had paranormal experiences. I do not discredit them. I just have not shared a similar experience. And it would really mean the world to me that if my first paranormal experience in my life was you. But with that being said, I want you to live as long as possible. So please do not take that the wrong way.
That's not a ghost. That's just my homie coming to say hi.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
You could be like your ghost could be like a co-host of the podcast. I mean, you can just be a co-host of the podcast anyway if you really want to be.
I kind of like the aesthetics of that, though, because you're sort of transparent, so you don't really have to worry about, the things that people stress about when they go on camera. Like, how do I look? How do I sound? What am I doing? What am I saying? You can just be there and look ominous. I don't know if that's the right word. I haven't read a whole lot in the last 10 years.
Ominous can work. Ghoulish.
Ghoul, for sure.
But like in a cool
I'm thinking
way.
Sort of like
ethereal.
Sort of, yes.
Mystical.
Yeah, like mystical, ethereal, translucent. Literally,
Sure.
But no, I will do that. I'll absolutely come and haunt you for sure. Because I too have not had an experience. Gratefully so, because I'm like, hey, whatever is out there, that's cool. They don't need to see me. I don't need to see them.
Yeah.
We're good. So, but I'll make sure I'm here.
Do you ever feel like I've kind of, a part of me wants to kind of take it personally in a way. Like, if this is a real thing, if the paranormal is real, why aren't you knocking on my door? Any of the spirits that are out there.
You mean the ones that you might have known when they were on this planet?
Anybody. Anything.
I think they talk about the veil. Maybe it has something to do with that separation. I don't know. I guess there, you also too, I guess you have to like, I guess you kind of need to like tune yourself on a certain frequency, like a radio station to some degree. I guess I'm not going out of my way looking for it. But also, when you're going out of your way to look for things, does that maybe color your perspective of what you may interpret, you know? I see. I think you're right.
If I am sitting here and it's late at night and I hear like I just figure, oh, somebody's upstairs, you know? But somebody that is more attuned to the paranormal might be like, oh, that's Frank.
Yeah. Yeah, some people seem very confident that they know who they might be if they feel like they're experiencing this kind of a thing. You know, like, that's just my dad. Or, oh, yeah, that's my mom coming to visit. Yeah, she does this every Saturday night, which is amazing that they're comforted by this, you know.
Sure.
I share the want of not experiencing it. Like, you're cool with it. I'm cool with not happening. I also don't discredit, as like you said, anything else. But I don't know. I don't know why that is.
Maybe we'll both be haunted.
Yeah, I think, we're not opening our eyes.
We're cresting on the end of 2024 here, which means we'll be entering 2025, and maybe my resolution will be to get haunted in some degree.
You might, and like you said, perhaps you must seek this. You know, think about how many like movies started with somebody twiddling around on an old like, you know, like an AM radio, and all of a sudden they hear something or whatever. So maybe it is just like that. Going back to what you said in the comparison you made, you just got to tune yourself into it and see who visits. Question is, who would if you're somebody could, okay, sure, friends, family, naturally. But if there was somebody that you never met, who would you like to be?
Who would I want to be haunted by?
Yeah, by the end of 2024, when you start channeling this, because I'm holding you to this.
Oh, you know, wow. I never really considered that, because my default answer would be like, it would be really great to speak to my grandmother again.
Oh, cool.
Who,
sure.
You know, I lost when I was like 15, and, you know, very pivotal figure in my life. Really shaped my my morals and my perspective. Kind of like you know, she was a beacon of light in a dark, chaotic world in that time that I was a part of. Right.
That sounds like a great person to connect with again.
But if I was to think of like somebody that wasn't a family member, like some sort of a celebrity or music icon or something like that, maybe John Lennon. So I could just kick him in the face.
You're not a fan of John's?
No,
specifically?
Fuck that guy.
Well,
and I don't even know why. Actually, I don't have a problem with the Beatles. I'm just being funny. This is just content.
I think John had his bad moments from what we're starting to understand.
I think
now.
Fame ruins people. And I think that they experience fame on a level that nobody else probably ever will because of like the time and place. So it's kind of hard to blame them. And also, if you consider that everything that happened, you know, okay, so we've both been alive, you know, a long time. We've played in bands for long periods of time, right?
Oh, yes, we have.
And we've had different levels of success in those bands. Everything that happened with the Beatles happened in like a 7-year time frame.
It's pretty mind-blowing.
So,
I agree.
It's like, okay, like...
Well, and the transitions from album to album, which are all unique and different, to be that convincing with the transition, to me, kind of might be what blows me away the most about the Beatles.
Oh, yeah.
Like, starting from this period to get to this period, and each record being... I probably would say Rubber Soul, Revolver were my favorites.
I agree with you.
George is my favorite Beatle for numerous reasons. But everything that, even stylistically, physically, the changes, like you said, in a 7-year period. I don't know. It just kind of, when you sit and break it down and you really think about it, it blows my mind. 7 years.
Yeah, I think
I
it was
mean,
like this is 7.
I've been talking about writing a poem for 7 years.
It was like under 10. You know, it's definitely under a decade.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that it gets very oversaturated because, you know, for the past 50 years, you always see them on the cover of magazines still, and the T-shirts at the mall, and the music, like the articles, and like, you know, so it's like they're just kind of like this omnipresent thing that is always there, and it really gets overlooked that it did happen in such a small small period of time. But yeah, it's just interesting to me, and I wouldn't actually go out of my way to like kick John Lennon or
I
anything.
didn't know if John had a specific, because I know of
I gotta be honest
few
with you.
instances.
I have to be honest with you, Mary. I wouldn't go out of my way to kick anybody.
That's you're a bigger person for that. I wish
Actually,
I
maybe
could
there's
say
a
the
couple
same.
people.
Yeah.
But those people aren't even people. They're like demons that walk amongst us, and they could be kicked.
Yeah.
But we don't got to talk about that.
No, I think it's sort of like that is a challenge. That'll challenge the ultimate, you know, living in ultimate peace, or how far do you go, or who, and I definitely have very strong opinions on that too. So perhaps, you know, I wanted to mention when you mentioned the Beatles though too, that Paul McCartney also always props. I think he was a great songwriter. I think he was a great bass player, to be honest, and many things, but we'll always applaud him for he and Linda and their animal rights take.
Oh, okay.
And standing so strongly on that. So of course they're always going to be in my favor for spending some of that, like you said, that iconic, you know, fame, you know, because now that I think it's the point where even the fame of them has become iconic, other than they themselves or the songs that they wrote. But to take some of that time to donate that time to those causes is pretty kick-ass.
Totally.
So, yeah.
You know, especially when you're in a position where you reach a level where you don't have to do anything.
Right.
So, and there's not like that kind of work is pretty thankless. So to like go out of your way to make an effort to put your time that you definitely don't have to do something does say a lot about your character.
I think so. I mean, a lot of people, I mean, think about how many times we hear people say that artists artists, I'd say probably most specifically I've heard through my lifetime, we don't care. We don't care what you think about this. Just make your art or do this. We don't care what you think about politics or ethics or what you align. But at the same time, there's people fighting for that every day that don't have that platform. So, you know what I mean? So if somebody does have the platform and it's important to them, then, I mean, rock it, you know?
Absolutely.
I know sometimes, though, then you can find out something about somebody, like you said, you know, that when you're like, oh,
yeah,
that's a surprise.
Yeah.
Didn't know that about you.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, I guess that's honesty. So.
Mary is alluding to a pre-recording conversation that we were having.
We had a gooder, not to, you know, not to uninclude all of y'all here, but
yeah,
you know.
just the concept of when you, sometimes you find out something about a person that is either like a close friend or maybe even like a celebrity says something in some interview or something, and you're just like, why did you do that? Why did you have to say that? Because now you're responsible for that information.
Right.
You know, like,
right.
And it could even be something that's like, doesn't even have to be that serious. Like the guitar player from the Deftones is like a pseudo flat earther, apparently. And now I can't listen to that band without thinking about the guitarist of this band just being a ding-dong.
It is definitely, when you do make those strong statements, though, what we were talking about, and you have that platform, you are putting yourself up there for division. You know, definitely. Like, if you're going to put it out there, if you're going to, you know, talk the talk, get ready to walk the walk. And that can go many ways. But again, I guess in some ways it's... Once you know once you know, and how you process and responsibly utilize that information I think it's a little harder than some people think as well. It's easy to say, oh, well, just, you know, depending. I mean, it depends on the circumstance too. I mean, there are definitely some no holds barred issues that are not up for discussion. But if it's a unique perspective on something, I feel like people should, then all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, this is so different now that I'm in the position where I have to, like you said, now I'm responsible for what I do with this information.
And it's all,
not as easy as...
and then you get into this like, you know, like you'll have people that are in your social circle that it's like, you're not the only person that found out this information. Other people around you know this information too.
Yes.
So it's like, not only how am I going to digest this information, but how are you digesting this information, and how are your reactions to that going to now affect how I feel about you? You know?
It is a, now that you put it that way, it is a far-reaching ripple effect.
It's a crazy domino effect.
Yes. Yeah. You're right. You're
like
right.
there was, you know, we will, without getting into like names, but people will know the situation I'm talking about. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But there was like a singer from some vaguely pretty popular metal band that went to jail for a while because he tried to hire a hitman to murder his wife.
Okay. That's
right. And that's some cornball behavior.
Yeah, that's extreme.
Right. And, you know, this person went to jail, did their time, rehabilitated, supposedly is a better person now, and now is out with that band, playing shows again and doing well.
Okay.
So, but there was a lot of people that I know that were just like, yeah, I don't really care that he did that. And what that says to me about their character, it's like this person that is pretty much just kind of like, even though the singer of this band to me is kind of like a fictional character. He's just a singer in a band. He's not somebody that I know. I'll never meet him in real life. His actions aren't going to have any real effect on my life. But now that I know that people that I'm friends with don't care about the concept of hiring somebody to murder your wife, says a lot about your personal character to me. And it's like, I'm going to kind of look at you differently, homie. Because like, it's like, I'm not saying that you're going to do this, but the fact that you don't care is like, okay, well, like, how do you feel about like relationships with people? How do you feel about women? Like, what's your respect level? It's just weird.
I think too, there's going to be a knee-jerk reaction for people to be in denial and want to just, you know, uncomfortably almost run away from it. So I think you could potentially, I think the best thing to do is to keep discussing it with that, you know, or get your own answers. Why would you say that? How could you say that? You know, like I need to know why you think that. And I think, again, sometimes a knee-jerk reaction and a response, sometimes it's not. Sometimes that's just it.
Yeah.
You know, but I know if I get blindsided by something, I too want to believe the best. Like, you didn't just really say that. Did you just really say that? Why did you say that? So it's a tough call, like you said, because it does now. All of a sudden, the opinion in something doesn't affect you personally does. Because opinions are now stated on the matter. And that's a horrendous what am I looking for here? Like, that's an invitation to an act of violence. That's, you know.
Yeah, it's corny.
Is crazy.
Is it like,
so I would like to think somebody would not condone that.
And also too, it's just like,
some people don't care.
It's like, bro, it's like the dude in this band is like writing these songs that are all about like, you know, perseverance and being strong and all this tough guy shit, and it's like, bro's a coward.
Well,
it's like,
absolutely.
It's like, I can't even. It's like, why would you even want to, like? Okay, just set aside that you don't fucking care about, you know, what he tried to do. It's like, why are you even listening to this music now? I think it's
there's hypocrisy just shining from every level.
But
exactly. So somebody would be welcome back for any reason.
Yeah,
is surprising.
And I think that some people just have like a different relationship with art and music, and I think for some people it probably doesn't go as deep as like, well, they don't care about women or anything like that. I think it's just like, oh, well, you know, this shit's heavy and I liked it when I was a teenager and I refuse to let my tastes evolve, and I'm only going to listen to the music that I listened to when I was 15 for the rest of my life.
And denial of all of a sudden now, thinking about and again, I don't want to go too far off the subjects, but I mean, how many like Hollywood is not what they want you to think it is, so to speak. You know, I mean, as far as like there's sort of this image of Hollywood and there's what really goes on. And that is a reflection of anything that can go on anywhere. It's not exempt from it. We see it with some of the awful things that have happened to people that we think might be sort of somehow like they have an immunity to it because they're involved in this world that's like sort of this protected world that we're all looking at from the outside, and the inside must be good. We know that's not true, just from what people have said about it. But thinking about how people, when they find out something awful about, like you were saying, but that's what I grew up with and that's whatever, people don't want. I mean, they feel personally let down because that now that destroyed something that they loved, you know, years ago. And I think maybe that might be the first reaction of, I don't care, because they don't want to have to face that yet, to be like, and now it's the constant reminder when they hear that band or see that actor or whatever, when we think, and everyone has experienced it in any generation. But if you're a boomer, Gen X, millennial, Gen Z, younger, whatever, everybody's got somebody that they were like, oh no,
you know,
oh no,
it's the,
you know,
it's the,
and it's not right to deny it. I'm just saying, I think it's a bit of a self-preservation. I don't want to believe this, you know, at first.
It's like, and this may not resonate with you 100%, but I think you'll understand what I'm going to say. It's like the McNugget. It's like, you don't want, once you know, like, you know, once you know how it's made and you still decide to eat it, but you're just like, you know what, it's like, I don't want to know. Or just like any sort of like weird processed food.
But I think that's a really good, exactly. That's a good comparison, which could lead in, and you're like, oh man, where am I going to this?
Hey, it's a podcast. Let's go.
With the fact that, I mean, that was a big sort of I think my first take, I'm not, you know, I'm a junk food eater. I always have been, you know, you saw what I brought.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's all junk food, but it's all vegan. So it's cool, you know? I mean, because everyone has a reason. If people are vegan, they have a reason for it. I'm vegan for the animals. I don't see any other way. It happens to have a lot of other benefits. But you can definitely eat junk as a vegan because I'm living proof of that. And I will always be. But that, like when you were talking about the McNugget and just the name McNugget. It's just making me laugh. And I'm thinking of the little puppets but even that too, making them all cute, but like back that up to not just about what are you eating, but also what's going on deep in the industry of factory farming and consumption. And I think we're all made for all of these reasons we are all a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of finesse is spent on making sure you don't know what's in that chicken McNugget.
Absolutely.
You know, we're kind of like, as the general public, people are kind of innocent. Oh, that's what this is. This is, you know, but you know, and that's not a conspiracy theory. That's to me, general good old capitalism. You know, I want to sell you something. I want you to think it's the best version of what it is. You know, this is cool. Eat this McNugget. And you're like, what is it though?
Yeah. And sometimes I really go back and forth between being somebody that is like happy to be aware as I am of my surroundings, but also really envious of this ignorance is bliss or just naive mindset that it seems like a lot of people are able.
Yes.
Like, you know, like if we take the conversation back to something a little less terrifying from like, you know, murder and factory farming, and we could just talk about maybe like bass tone. Like, can I listen to an album and not have to criticize the way every single instrument sounds? Or can I just fucking enjoy it?
Yes. Yes.
It's like, and everything in my life is just like, I have to be so hypercritical and overanalyze every little fucking thing.
You think you personally, you're making a statement about yourself.
Yes.
I feel like I overanalyze.
I know I do.
Well, I think there's also so many things like you might have, you love music. You grew up literally as a baby listening to all kinds of music. So that's been one of the biggest parts of your life. It's like freaking spirituality,
Yeah,
the way
definitely.
it kind of like moves you and what it does or whatever. So I think once you get really ingrained in it, you could have a propensity to do that. And also as a musician, and all, just kind of listening to things, it could just be an analytical mind.
Yeah.
Which, some people do. They look at anything and they start analyzing the Mickey phone. Like, how does that, okay, we go, what's behind the Mickey phones? What's, in the base?
I am very well aware. I will, I'm not going to beat myself up on camera, but, I don't, I don't always think the highest of myself at times. I think that's natural. But one thing that I am very aware of, it is something I will pat myself on the back for, is I know that my tendency to overanalyze and overthink and overprepare has kept me out of a lot of trouble and getting into a lot of situations that I very easily would have had I not done that. Not put forethought into it.
Yes, and I just want to state quickly that overanalyzing isn't a bad thing. Always. I think it's a bad thing if it becomes if it becomes self-harming, or if it becomes over-criticizing. I think we all know. So, but yeah, having an analytical mind, if that's how your mind works, like you said, it sounds interesting
that what's that threshold between like analysis and criticism?
Sure.
And I guess even criticism to some degree is good to have. But like, how do you... Is this a conversation of happiness, maybe?
Well,
joy?
Well, there's also anxiety. There's insecurity on the account of a lot of us, because I think most people are insecure. I kind of envy people that aren't, that are just like, I'm who I am and I'm happy. I think that's great. I don't know how people get to that level. I wish I knew. I wish we could. That's what I wish we could sell. If we could sell anything, like, let's sell a way for people to be better and to be better with themselves, myself included, but I don't know. There's so much that's going through my head now. Now I'm analyzing in my head.
Analyzing how to discuss.
Yes,
talking about analyzing.
I hit the wall and was like, wait a minute. So yeah, you can feel free to edit that out. That I was just like,
we're not editing anything.
Never mind on that. No, but again, I think people have to approach their analysis with everything needs to be approached with compassion. Nothing is bad, and to be able to see things from another side, or to be mindful of a feeling. So I think, that being said, that's where you can. And analyzing stuff can be fun too, breaking something down scientifically, or, like, again, if you work on cars, it's kind of fun. It's not fun when you've got 5 waiters in the waiting room wondering where their cars are. I know this from experience, but that's why we don't deal with waiters where I work. But actually just getting to the science of a breakdown is pretty great. So again, but where it comes from, I think you're right. I think it could come from many different places. But be kind to yourself when you wonder why you're overanalyzing things. But maybe you just love it too. Like, you're not trying to be critical of the bass sound or the bass player, going back to the bass. Well, but if it's just like, I think I'd like this. If it were me, this is how I would do it.
Well, that was the thing. It's not like, I think you saying that I'm like this because I love it, I think that is super accurate, because I didn't like wake up one day when I was 17 and I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna like start to like view movies in a different way or listen to music in a different way. It just happened over time. And then one day I caught myself like, why am I like, how did this happen?
I don't know. If you can't pinpoint a situation, but again, if it's something you pursue and that you love, and it's pretty obvious, even being in your space here, understanding some of the things that you love, or making a guess at it, that, as you progress, because you grow with the things that you love, and then you start to look at things a little differently. It might have been one thing, and like in movies, you love movies. It would have been one shot in a movie that you caught that made you think about something a little bit more and took you down a bit of a rabbit hole, to look at things differently.
I think that, I think that a lot of it happened from me just naturally getting more involved in actually producing things. especially with music. My experience with producing movies is very limited. I tried to make a horror movie in high school with my friends.
Do you have it?
Oh yeah, I still have it.
When are we screening that baby?
The Night No One Will Survive. That was the name of it.
I think everybody would like to see this. I know I would.
I mean, you know, it exists.
Will we survive?
No.
Maybe we don't. It's like the ring. It's like the ring. Don't watch.
Yeah.
Don't watch the VHS tape.
But you know, it give you, once you start like learning how to do things, you get like a different appreciation for it.
Wow.
You
yes,
know?
absolutely.
Like, you know, I don't know anything about cars in the way that I know about recording music, or maybe even movies to some degree, but getting a car, I don't fucking know. It turns on, it drives. But I'm sure maybe somebody in your position, you could maybe be in a different vehicle and like, just like the way that like the engine is vibrating, you could be like, oh, this has to do with X, Y, and Z, you know, something that sounds like the ingredients that would be in a chicken McNugget, perhaps.
We need to get the chicken McNuggets off the planet for good.
But yeah,
no nugs, no McNuggets, none of them. God, but it is. But that's also too, like, not everybody is expected to know everything or even care. That's why you have people like, if you want to record music, if you make music, and you want to record music, it's a whole different story when you get to work with somebody on the other end versus you're at home trying to do it yourself. Somebody else, like you said, is more fine tuned. It takes time, and other people are like, hey, just make it sound good. Show us what you got. Cars are the same way. I think everything is. I think I'm going to go way off topic though and bring something up that we've been talking about for the last week. And that's, if it's not your area of interest or your area of expertise, don't assume somebody's like intelligence. You know what I mean? People judge people by things like, oh, well, you don't know how to do this with a car, blah, 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 blah. And it's just kind of like, no. And why are you judging that person? That's not their thing. You know, it's just like if somebody, well, what are you, stupid? You don't know how to, you know, like, we're going to punch your bass in here. You don't know how to. It's like, no, I don't know how to do that because that's not what I do. Everybody needs to like start respecting what other people are good at and stop dogging people for not being like as invested in certain things and judging them for it. That's all. That came out of nowhere. I know, like, to look at your face, you're like, what are you saying?
No,
and where did that come from?
No, I think it's related to what we're talking about.
We're looking for every reason to tell people, stop being jerks, everybody.
Sure.
So that was my moment at the time.
Hey.
But
it's a good moment. It's a good message to have. But I think that this all loops back around to, you know, finding out about things about people that you didn't want to find out. And it's all based on their understanding of a particular situation. And sometimes in a lot of circumstances when people maybe hear something horrifying about somebody and they're like, they push it off as like, I don't want to think about this. I don't want to deal about it. You know, I don't want to deal about it. I don't want to deal with it. Maybe that is just like a physical manifestation of them not understanding themselves, who they are as a person. Right.
Well, you have to call a lot into question, you know, and again, the first reaction I think by some people is, I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to know, because of everything that you just said in that last comment, which is insightful.
It's like, I don't want to be responsible for this information. It's like the la 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 type stuff.
I think everybody at some point, not that it would be our proudest moments, but like, oh man, did I just hear that? Like, I just heard that. Now what? Oh, okay, so how do we proceed with this? You know, so that is the.
Like,
I think
it's like if you're. It's like
it's not
like
easy.
It's like you're at a friend's house, right? And maybe like you open the bathroom door too hard and you put like a little nick in the wall or something, and you're like, am I going to say anything about this? Or am I just gonna... maybe they'll think they...
Or the bumper.
Yeah, you know, like...
the car door.
Yeah. You know...
The guitar that you had to borrow, and you're like, ooh, I should have taken my belt off before I put this on.
Oh,
yeah. So, yes.
Yeah.
Continue, but...
I guess there is sort of like a human instinct of self-preservation in some of these circumstances too.
Yes.
You know.
But the best way is always to fess. And you always end up fessing up at the end. So I think facing it head on, but it's hard. It's hard. And then, you know, you go through a myriad of emotions and then you're resentful to that. But if it's a person, like we're talking about, if somebody, you find out something, you're resentful that they, you know, then there's that you put me in this position now because of what you did. You know, it's a complicated thing. It's a complicated thing. And I do think that there are some things that are more understandable. There are some things that you can be less forgiving of.
Yeah.
You know, and it's complicated, again, without having maybe specifics. Like if we were to be discussing specific issues, I think we'd know absolutely not. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think when somebody comes from a point of where they've had access to information, education, knowledge, privileged, and make bad choices, I know I'm definitely a lot harder on that person from some of the things that they have done versus, you know, it doesn't make any of it excusable. But, you know, I also like change is something that we all want to see happen all the time, you know, politically, you know, environmentally, ethically. But so you have to allow people to change. So under what circumstances and how do you do it? You know, so like you said, you find out this bit of information that now you have to, you know, eventually you're going to have to like, you know, again, you'll try all the tactics and the techniques, including the, why are you putting me in this position? Now I have to like react to this and I don't know how because I'm so disappointed and confused. You know, I mean, you get to that point, but then what is forgivable through change that we all want to see happen? You know, like I know it has to be, you have to accept accountability. I know that you have to be authentic. You know, I know circumstantially things could be come into play. I mean, I'm diving a little bit deep into what we were talking about. Like, what do we do now? What do we do now? Aside of this person getting flat out canceled, how do we change this problem that this person's exemplifying? Or do we? Is this done? You're off. You're on the island. Get them out of here.
There's no. It's impossible because there's no one set of rules that you can apply to every single problem. And everybody has a different perspective of what a problem even is to begin with. Sure.
Yeah, no, that's true. So, that's really true. That's really true.
The variables are like fucking unbelievable. They're it's outrageous. Like,
and
how
until
many
you talk, you won't know what that is.
Yeah.
You know, like if you and I came together and we were both, I'm trying to think of something like, okay, let's go for something basic that's basically like, let's say, okay, let's talk about 80s hair metal. Is it glam? Is it metal? Is it metal at all? Is it rock? Is it rock and roll? Is it pop? What is this? And then we discuss our opinions on this. And, you know, like I know that's also kind of, I guess it's kind of an obscure one too. But like if you're, you know, like going through when people say, oh, Poison, hair metal. And then it's like there will be people that will say, but it's not metal. It's not, it shouldn't be in that category. It's in a different category. You know, metal would be rat, maybe more like would consider, you know, to be like this. So we're sitting down and then though we say, okay, we can appreciate a genre of music, but then we start talking and we realize our definitions of that are very different or are different, you know? So when you were just talking about like going back and changing and everyone has a different opinion or impression on what the thing is. Yeah, I just think talking about it is it's just like anything else is sort of like kind of figuring it out and flushing it out.
Yeah.
I got a little off topic there too.
That's okay.
Because then all of a sudden I was thinking about CC DeVille. And I went way off you know, and I was like, he's really an underrated guitar player.
I was just going to say.
That's where I went straight to when we went from a serious thing to.
CC DeVille, great hair. And I also want to, I mean, there's a lot of people that I feel bad for in the 80s realm of pop rock. Who
actually were very, well, record labels also had a lot to do with that.
But that motherfucker was on one. And it's you know, it's like, it just, you know, it sucks that he's definitely like kind of like overshadowed in the legacy.
DeVille?
Yeah.
You know, I think too, I would love your opinion on this as we've gone to, so many things. But, you know, I think about this, and I think you think about this a lot too, I'm guessing, because we have a lot of this, we have a lot of similar interests, but different generations, you know, a little generation apart here to process this. But I feel that, like, so if a basic general public popular band that people like, they're eye-catching to people of all, you know, whatever, that, like, huge bands that get huge, so they obviously appeal to a wide variety of people, right? I feel like people will always, you know, like, they just naturally, as humans, gravitate. Please edit that. Gravitate. Yeah, there we go. Graduate to the person who's commanding the microphone at the time, hence the vocalist.
Sure.
Hence Brett, good old Brett. So I think that's kind of like, too, I think naturally. I mean, as somebody that has primarily played a bass guitar in bands, we're getting no love other than from other bass players.
I feel like
so, like, we're overdoing our thing. And people are like,
I have a you know I have a conspiracy theory regarding Bret Michaels.
Okay.
Very simple. I know that there are some people out there that, like, you know, have their different conspiracy theories. I mentioned Stephen Carpenter from the Deftones being maybe a flat earther.
Sure.
There's some people that think the moon landing was fake. I don't think Bret Michaels wrote Every Rose Has Its Thorn. There's no fucking way that Ding Dong wrote that fucking song.
Well, you know what's interesting? Is it kind of, well, there's image, and then there's what's really going on behind the image, you know? And again, we were talking about how, like, in the 80s, record labels really they really inserted themselves on top of these bands.
Oh, yeah.
For better or for worse, right? So it's sort of like, I'm just picturing a group of people being like, man, I don't want to wear the wig. Like, I just want to go out in my street clothes. And they're like, no, you guys are going to, like, here's going to be your shtick. You people, here's your stick. Or you guys, you kids, you know, you folks, everybody, like, putting the bands all, okay, your shtick is going to be this. Your shtick is going to be this. And they're like, oh, man, I didn't want the shtick. I just want to play my music. So something, I always wonder what really is going on behind the scenes. But I did see something came up on my YouTube feed. And it was about that song. And this was last night. And it was about talking about how, I think what it was is they were talking about power ballads. That's what it was about. And then popular power ballads, which power ballads, I don't think they're still really a thing or defined as such in contemporary, like, popular music.
Certainly not.
Yeah. And I think it spans, like, to me, a power ballad, we always see it as, we think of it as coming from a certain genre, at least I do. But a power ballad is just that. It's a ballad that's powerful, classic rock. It could be a pop song. Yeah, I mean, whatever. But that came up, and he was saying that he had, and I apologize. I'm sorry for cutting you off.
That's okay.
I'm just really excited to be here. So I am. So, and I'm interrupting. But I think he was saying, he was defining the moment of dating the same woman for a long time. And they realized their worlds weren't able to stay in the same world together. Hence, he wrote that song. Maybe she wrote that song. Who knows? I don't know. But it's weird you said that.
It's, you know, maybe it is, you know, a 1 in a million thing, and that was his whole purpose on this earth was to give us Every Rose Has Its Thorn and every season of Rock of Love, of course.
Yeah.
You know?
I watched it. I did.
Yeah,
I watched it.
I did too.
Yeah. So what was your...
But that's what makes me think there's no way he wrote that song.
Okay, that's what I was going to say. I'm so sorry. I jumped right into being... I selfishly... I took the floor and I was talking like, this is so weird because I just saw
that song,
him talking about... But
to me, objectively, like, that song is like a masterclass of, like, songwriting, regardless of genre. That song is fucking insane. But, like, he has the credits for that.
So you think it's a great song?
I do.
Like a great
by any means.
Pop
You
song.
could sit down and
Ballad.
anybody with a good voice could sit down at almost any instrument and do a rendition of that song, and it would sound just as good.
Sure.
And to me, that's what I think really defines a good song. Like, can you get, like, could Lady Gaga sit down at a piano and do Every Rose Has Its Thorn and give me tingles? Yes, probably.
Okay. I see. It spans. I see. Yeah.
It transcends genre. Genres. It transcends generations.
Yep.
I think that you could, like, you know, that could have been like a bluegrass song in the early 1900s.
It definitely could have been a country song because it has a very, well, you know, when it comes to contemporary pop of any sort, it all kind of crosses over to me. Like, contemporary country sounds like adult contemporary rock, which sounds like contemporary pop.
Oh,
like,
sure.
Like there is a more similar, going behind the scenes, the bass line, the beat behind of it, where's the 2 and the 4 falling on the drum set. That might make it different, but everything can roll into another generation.
We've gotten very homogenized. Pop culture is, like, really interesting because, like, I think now we're getting off topic, but we'll put a pin in Bret Michaels, but talking about the...
Don't put a pin in this.
I mean, he could deal with it, all the diabetes. So that was a really bad joke.
That was a really bad joke. Apologize.
I'm sorry, Brett. I'm sorry. Have you ever seen his merchandise that he makes? That has, like, he has a t-shirt that he's made that has, like, all of his ailments on it.
Oh my gosh, no.
And it's like, it's really, like,
I've never met the guy.
Yeah. I'm fascinated by Bret Michaels. But he definitely puts himself out there, I think, to be mocked just a little bit, but I do respect him to some degree.
Gotcha.
But anyways, we are putting a pin in Bret Michaels.
Okay, pin.
That is
sorry, Brett.
Nothing to do with his diabetes.
Okay.
That was rude. I'm sorry, Brett.
Let's say it's his piercing.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Oh, pop culture and the homogenized stuff. Yeah, it's so. I am a child of the 90s, and it was very normal, you know, to like a lot of different things. But all of those different things had their own identity. And, you know, it was like, oh, okay, well, you know, this rock wants to be like a little bit of rap, and this rap wants to be a little bit of rock, and this pop wants to be a little bit edgy, and these edgier bands maybe want to be a little bit more accessible. And you kind of, like, have people trying things, but everything is still in its own lane. But I feel like over time, these metaphorical lanes have been closed, and now pop culture is driving on a single lane road, and there's so much traffic.
Yeah.
And everything is just, like, there's no, like, individual identities or lanes to travel. It's like there's only one lane to go down, and it's TikTok. And, like, and it makes it so weird. Like, even if you go to the shopping mall now, like, if me and you stopped this conversation and drove to Ross Park Mall,
okay,
how many stores do you think you could buy a Nirvana t-shirt in?
More than I would
probably
have thought
almost,
in 1992.
Probably almost all of them.
Yes, I agree.
Graphic tees of any sort.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's just like, that's a very surface level thing of just, it's like, you know, counterculture, pop culture, like, what is it? Like, everything's trying to be everything else. You know, I've seen, like, Star Wars t-shirts that look like heavy metal shirts, and I've seen heavy metal shirts that look like surf shirts.
Sure.
And, like, and it's like, I get it, like, it's fun, but it's all the same.
I see what
And now there's no like individual identity of any of these things. And then none of that really matters to me personally. All where it starts to affect me personally is in the end result of the art. And so much of this art, to your point, talking about how modern contemporary music, a lot of it sounds so similar to you. And that's because it is. Everything's trying to beat each other too much. It's like everybody wants to make everybody happy for the algorithm or for the radio or for whatever. So it's like, I'm a country artist, but I want this to still sound a little bit of rock or a little bit of pop, or even you get pop artists that are like, I want to be a little bit country because I want to get those fans. I want to get these fans. And it's like, I don't feel like it is experimentation for the sake of creativity. I feel like it's experimentation for the sake of monetary gain.
Sure.
And that...
It's almost like a hit. You know what I mean? It's like a hit on your...
bothers me because it's just like, you're trying to be everything in a way that is like deceiving. You're like trying to trick people
for the wrong reasons.
Into liking to your, and liking your art.
Yeah,
it's not
there
like,
isn't soul behind
you don't have
any
like
of
a
that.
genuine, like you don't have this genuine want to be like, oh, I'm gonna make like a death metal country album. It's just like, no, I just want to trick these people into liking. I just want more fans. And it's weird.
Think it's
the good art and let the fans come.
I think maybe too, and I might have stepped out. Like I might be out of that recognition of that just due to generation. You know, like I think a lot of stuff you're on the pulse of everything. I'm kind of moving out what is going on, other than the fact that I remember watching something, and I was never a watcher. The only Grammys I think I ever watched is when Metallica was up for one, and it was Lita Ford and Alice Cooper presented it, and Jethro Tull won. You know, and people laugh about that. I'm like, don't tell me Jethro Tull's not a great band, because if you're going to tell me that, that's okay. Maybe not heavy metal, although some stuff was pretty heavy that they did. But anyway, that would have been the only time that I really paid attention, probably. But I think it was on the television. It was like maybe around 2010, because I remember where we lived, and I was just watching the winners as I was watching, you know, going through the house or whatever. It just happened to be on the TV, but it was so similar, you know, that I was like, this is like the most watered down version and blended, bland version of every genre. I'm not saying the musicians were bad, because that doesn't, but again, what was being put out there and was being kind of pushed to everyone as being, this is the best of it. I did notice was a very, everything was a watered down version of bluegrass. To me, it was.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't that hard kicking like heart and soul. It was more like you said, and maybe that's what it is. And I can't imagine it would be for anything other than to, like you said, to try to pilfer some listeners from different genres. Like back in the 70s, if something charted on two charts, that charted number 5 on the rock and the country chart. That was like a big deal. But now, like you said, it's intentional to try to grab everybody. Or, you know, it's like, we're going to take this, like you said, we're going to take this logo, but put it in this style, but put it behind this music, and it's a bit much. It all seems like a big AI hodgepodge, you know, like if you actually typed in, like, you know, put in 10 types of music, you know, of genres, and was like, okay, create this, and that's what you'd get. Yeah, it was that. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't really thought about it.
Yeah, it
and
feels
now I
like
see it.
There are, you know, a lot of people now that are like, you know, for whatever reason, deciding to be like an artist as like a career decision. Which is like a really dumb idea. Like, there's much easier ways to make money.
Yeah, that's a tough road.
And like, if you're gonna do this,
glamorous.
Don't ruin it. Don't ruin art for the people that actually give a fuck about art. You know, like, you know, it's like, if you want to be, you know, like famous on the internet or famous for whatever it is, I feel like there's other things to do than to try to like bogart art and ruin art, because now like labels and the people that are like, there's always going to be gatekeepers, but like the gatekeepers of art, the gatekeepers of music now are not super interested in individuality. They're just interested in like, what is going to get us like that temporary hit now. You know, it's almost like what I imagine like some type of like an addiction would feel like, but it's like they're addicted to just getting that temporary hit of like, oh, we signed this new artist that has some song that's not going to mean anything over the course of time, but it will get us a lot of It'll give
going
us a
back
lot of
to the
boost
Beatles,
now.
they're not going to be the next Beatles.
Yeah.
There's never been a next Beatles. There have been people that have withstood the test of time over decades and generations, which is awesome. But like you said, for the reason that you said about still seeing their freaking photos from the 60s on magazines while you're at the grocery store, right? So that is not going to happen. So it is sort of like strike while the iron is hot a little too much. Again, now I think everybody is buying into the whole like, nope, people just want something that's 30 seconds or less, 15 seconds or less. You hit big. I mean, corporations, companies, tech companies, I mean, they invest so much time and energy to sell the company and to retire off. And then what happens to the company? Does it ever develop? Sometimes it doesn't. A lot of times it doesn't, because you're sort of selling a really, really comprehensive idea. The potential for something to hit big.
Sure.
To hit big and to hit hard. But I think that might just be paralleling everything that's going on in society too. Like you said, appropriating a lot of genres that people worked really hard to be like, boom,
Yeah.
I mean, we've all seen some sort of like pop thing that looked like a black metal.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's sort of like, ugh, oof.
Yeah. And yeah.
Who knows? And so it's kind of, but I can also understand if I loved black metal, like with all of my heart, I would be upset by that.
Yeah. It's,
you know what I mean? Because I'd be like, whoa, what are you doing with this?
Yeah. It is really, really interesting, but it also goes to show like the power of art and the power of these original ideas, these original identities, these original, cultures and movements that
and commitment to it by people
that inspired so much, that got to a point that it's like, you can see like H&M ripping off a Dark Throne long sleeve, and it's like, what is happening?
Well, that blows my mind too. Also, maybe being older and seeing how few people knew who that was.
Yeah.
Back in the early 90s. How many people knew who Dark Throne was,
Yeah.
And now, like you said, you can go and hate it. It's because that kind of blows my mind. Because I still think like the internet didn't happen. I'm just jumping from like when I was like 20 to now and going like, how do they know about this? Like nobody knows. Like it's still tape trading through the mail and handwriting letters, But yeah, it's just like you said, it got to that point.
It's just interesting, like how the access to information is a really good thing, and I think being like a gatekeepy with stuff is definitely not something that I encourage or endorse at all. But it is just interesting to see like this culture, like heavy metal subculture, counterculture in general, get co-opted to the point that it's like, what is the identity of counterculture anymore? What is if we wanted to make it a little less vague, like what is the idea of heavy metal now? Like what identity of it? And when is it going to change? If it can change, can it change? Because maybe, and I'm gonna narrow it down to this, because this could be like a very vague thing that could go.
Okay.
It could be very broad, and we're gonna narrow it down to
We're gonna narrow this down.
Let's narrow this down to death metal.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay.
Let's do it.
So death metal is not a new genre of music by any means. Some may argue that death metal is about as old as me. And, I'm close to 40.
Fair enough. Yep.
And, you could nitpick, probably trace some roots a little bit earlier, but we could say early 80s is probably when this started to kick up, right? Why, people could point out some exceptions, I'm sure. But, okay, when death metal happened, right, the transition, it was like, this sound is new. And not only the sound, the image of this is new. This is extreme, and this is a huge cultural shift. And then it never changed. The past 4 decades, the way the I mean, production aside, it's like, why does this still look the same? Why do these logos look the same? Why are we still doing You get
It's
what I'm saying?
mind blowing to people that aren't 20. Like you said, if you were sort of like, again, if you're like Gen X millennial, maybe you're a boomer, but because like my first introduction to death metal would have been like death metal. Like again, we were talking about this the other day about going to the bands. Like what were the first death metal bands? Like debating, like as far as from our like late teenage years, like transitioning from thrash into death metal, because you always had those bands that kind of walk the line. Let's say Possessed is a good band, Creator even too, that it's like I define them as thrash bands. But if you look at the way that the vocals are going, you had bands like Master from Chicago, and then you had Massacre from Florida, like as things were moving into the direction, like combining and things were getting heavier, right? So that's going back to, like I said, in my knowledge would be, I was aware of that because I did college radio when I went to Pitt, and a long time ago, everybody, obviously. What was you, Penn State? Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sorry for
No.
you.
No, I didn't go to school.
I'm kidding. I was joking with a Penn State friend. I was like, aren't we supposed to we're supposed to fight or something like that. Yeah, so we always fake fight about like football scores and things like that. But so anyway, that going back would be and you're right. And it's so interesting to be able to see it, to have had the privilege to be old enough to have seen so much. You have as well, to see how much, like you said, it didn't change. And it's kind of amazing. So like someone who's like maybe 15, 17, they're new to it. Hey, you could be 60 and just discovering it and love it. And I think that's the difference between gatekeeping. Everyone's welcome. Yeah. Everyone should be welcome, but just love it because you love it.
It's so
just love it because you love
totally.
it. You don't have to, it's not an expectation. You don't have to use it to define yourself. You can just love it because you love it. If you define yourself with it, that's your right call, whatever. But yeah, how you can see the logos and the styles, which is why I think I'm cracking up as an older person. Sometimes when you see some of the newer band names, and I'm like, we say it's got to be so hard now because so many names have been taken. Like, where do you even go to? Like, younger people, new bands are struggling to be like, what the hell are we going to call ourselves? Because all of these names have been taken, and then people start moving into numbers and different. I do think though, in some of it, not necessarily death metal, because that's what makes it, when you subdivide, well, let's subdivide the doom genre. Okay. So you've got metal, you've got heavy metal, rock, heavy metal. You can subdivide and continue to subdivide. So let's say you're going to the point where you're like thrash, speed metal, prog, death metal, doom, but then you take doom to like traditional doom, right? Okay, so you've got your bands like you've got Trouble and you've got Saint Vitus and you've got let's see, Revelation and Penance and bands like that. And then you've got death doom bands. And then you've got the bands that are considered doom that are more like My Dying Bride. Then you've got bands like Paradise Lost that fill. And then some people put sleep in that genre, which, like I said, I think they walk, and they definitely toured with a lot of those bands. I think they're almost their own entity though. Things like that, Cathedral. And then all then you've got ethereal doom, you've got drone doom, you can just keep on going. But death metal as death metal, in order for it to be death metal, kind of has to be one of these few things. It's kind of like you can have death grind, you can have doom death, because that's existed since the 80s, as you and I know. But there is something, and I'm going way off on it. But that death metal, like you said, but I do think people will bring their experiences. Like, let's say you grew up in 2010 versus in the 80s. And then it's sort of like your influences might have been other bands first. You always kind of get deeper and deeper. Like you're talking about Ides earlier and how you would go to Ides and you would be like, I like this. And they're like, you like this? Try this. You like this? Try this. Then try this. And before you know it, you're like way down here and you're like, whoa, what am I even listening to? This is kind of crazy. But I think, so I do think that like there might be a little bit of a battle for people that didn't grow up with it to play it, but they do a pretty damn good job.
Yeah.
of keeping it that thing.
Yeah, it's just like it's
pure to that thing.
It's interesting how like in a lot of ways, in a lot of different cultures, art evolves, and like as a result of like not only does like the music itself evolve, but like the style and the imagery and the branding and
Sure.
all of that also evolves over time.
Sure.
But with death metal, it's like, is there any other genre of music that got it right on the first try?
I don't know, and I think you're right.
Because like it's just they did it, and then everything still looks like that.
I think you're right, and I think it might be the only like thrash too. People that might be going back to sort of like playing that more of a pure thrash style. Now, thrash, as we know too, could also be like hardcore. There could be like, there was punkier thrash, and then there was more metal thrash, and then there was, everything kind of skateboard based and skater thrash or speed metal, two guitars, all kind of like fell into that. But so that too had a little bit, and like you said with death metal. But if people are playing death metal now, let's say they're 18, they're fresh. They weren't around in 1988, or they weren't, when death was, when Mantis became death, and then all of a sudden, like Scream Bloody Gore came out, and you have bands like Autopsy, and you have bands like Repulsion that are just blowing minds, that are also still kind of like genre wise, you can kind of be like, okay, we're moving so much into this direction, but they want to be that thing, and they go back to be that thing, and they're trying to create that thing. Some will take it again and take it to different levels, which is where we've seen like hardcore's gone so many different directions.
Yeah, it's interesting.
You know what I mean? So you have to specify the type of hardcore that it is. But if it's death metal, you pretty much are going to expect, it seems like the younger people that want to play it go back to the people that predated them, to like the originals, and they're like, this is what we want to do. What did these people do? So it is kind of like a charmingly purist sense in wanting that genre to like encompass the things of that genre.
Yeah.
And like you said, the logos, back in the day, it was like, all the logos were like, it was like the fuzzier the better, the pointier the better. And now it's evolved into something totally different, which is, unreadable. It looks more like a brand than a logo, but that's what it is. That's what it's evolved into, something. But if somebody's in a death metal band, man, you're like you said, it's going to be drippy, it's going to be fuzzy, like hairy. It's going to like it has to be, or it's something else. So I never thought about that. That was a really cool breakdown. I didn't mean to go off, but
no,
I was just like, come to think of it, when people say I'm in a death metal band, they are in a death metal band. It's not a 2024. They're pretty, And I think that things are meant to evolve. And I think people are to bring their own experiences into it.
Yeah.
Which is why hardcore probably changed over the years, because people did bring more metal into it, because those people grew up, it wasn't growing up on the Lower East Side of New York, or in DC or Boston, in the late 70s. It's something new, and people are bringing their own experiences, and they should. But death metal, let it be death metal.
Yeah.
More power to everyone doing it, I suppose,
Yeah, it's just, as like somebody, and maybe this is just, again, like me being somebody that's just like behind the curtain too much, over analyzing too much.
It's fun to,
and it's
fun,
just
though.
like, I think that it is fun, but
you're
also,
not being critical.
I have a hard time, I try not to be that person that starts to be like, I don't care what the kids are doing. But
sure,
it's
I know.
unintentionally happening. Where like, it's like, I'm old enough now where it's like the majority of like a lot of like these new young cool bands are people that are like half my age, and it's like, age has nothing to do with it, but I also couldn't give a shit less. Well, and I don't know what that is.
I think it is because it's a different experience. Like, once again, like, let's take a band like Slipknot. Who's huge.
I would love to hear your take on Slipknot.
Well, I don't know enough about them, other than the fact that what I know of them, because I was in a different place. I was in a different age bracket and a different place when they blew up, and I know that from what I understand, they've got, nobody should have to prove they have cred. If you love doing it and you're, do it. It doesn't matter. But the people in that band, I think it's a huge pool of people, are talented people, and they sort of had a vision and they had their thing. But that's after my time. That was after my time. So I can understand, like, at first, because I'm like, what is, and I was like, this is something for somebody else. And it was for people that were 10 years, 15 years younger than me, that came up at a different time with different influences. Yeah. So it kind of made sense.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. Yep. I was like, this is a combination of different influences, even though I think my age bracket is, rivals that of some of the members of that band.
Oh, definitely.
You know what I mean? Like, again, it seems like I don't have an opinion. I don't know their music, but like I said, just because they were after my time, I do respect, I do, respect people to, like, just because it's not my thing, do it. And hopefully a lot of people will love it, and just be good to your people. You know what I mean? Yeah. Be good to your people.
Slipknot is a band for me that was super pivotal because that first record came out when I was like 14 or 15 years old. And, but the thing is like, this is also coming from somebody that, like, it wasn't like I found metal through Slipknot by any means. Sure. You know what I mean? Well, like, I remember, like, thinking of death metal, like, my exposure to death metal was, like, going through my dad's tapes and finding his Butchered at Birth cassette tape.
Amazing.
And being like, what am I looking at? Yeah. Yeah. Because, like, the artwork's very gnarly.
And at the time, Cannibal Corpse was Buffalo. So, like, that's just a band from Buffalo. And bunch of nice guys, which they were, still are, I'm sure.
Yeah. And, like, it was, like, this is intense.
Yeah.
And, like, I grew up around a lot of heavy metal. Yeah. But the thing with Slipknot, and the thing that I need to remember when I'm thinking about stuff that younger people are listening to now, Slipknot was mine. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yep. It was my band. Right. It may not have been as crazy as other things I had heard or any other bullshit, but it was mine.
Mm-hmm. Well, the fact, though, that you had the unique exposure of coming up at a time where you had family members that were going to City Limits, which is, again, where everybody went for death metal shows, the Banana, you know, and then sometimes some of the areas, like, well, if you think all the bands that were, like, a lot of the groundbreaking bands, like different styles of underground metal, but you had bands like Dream Death, and you had bands like Necropolis, and we were talking about Eviction, but you had Hideous Manglius from Bell Vernon area, who are my favorites, and it's almost like if you took hardcore and grindcore, they were considered grindcore, but you stuck together because there's definitely some hard riffs going on in there too, and the vocals were super low, like Mortician level, okay, but they were peers. They were like contemporaries of Mortician, so nobody was ripping anyone off. Rotrevor, Mon Valley, you know what I mean? So, like, it was like the greater Pittsburgh area, right? But so everybody would converge at City Limits or the Banana, sometimes Graffiti, depending on what the era was. It was Laga for a lot of people that are younger than I am. That's where you would go to see that type of music, right? And then again, there was Jam and Skate. I mean, I could go on about that, but you had the unique exposure of so young, being 10 years old and going to see the Cramps at Metropole. So the fact that you that you predate with having, or even just seeing a cassette copy of Butchered at Birth when you were that young, and then you saw Slipknot and claimed them as your own, is, to me, is like a big shout out to a band like Slipknot.
Sure.
Because you had the experience where you were seeing this crazy underground stuff long before. It wasn't like you said, it wasn't your intro into it.
That was like my dad's stuff. Like that's the stuff my uncle likes.
So Cannibal Corpse at the time was dad rock.
You're
like, ugh, my mom and dad listened to this.
But the funny thing is, like, my first favorite band ever was Iron Maiden. And, like, to this day, they're still probably my favorite band of all time. Yeah. But I definitely went through a phase where it was like, oh, that's the stuff I liked as a kid. Mm-hmm. And then, I separated myself from it for a long time. And then, you know, I got a little bit older and I got a turntable.
Yep.
And I remember I was at Jerry's and I found a copy of Somewhere in Time. And I was like, oh, I remember this record. I was like 16. I went home and listened to it.
You were like, oh.
And it was like, that was like I don't believe in time travel, but that record, no pun intended with the fucking name, but that fucking record, like, it changed. I was like, holy shit. Like, I forgot. Because I was, like, in, like, at that point, it was, like, you know, I was probably in, like, some weird, like, new metal wormhole of, like, you know, like, the Slipknot turned into, like, you know, there was a lot of cool stuff that happened in that time frame, but a lot of their contemporaries, like, I liked all that shit, all of the System of a Down, Korn, and Deftones, and all that stuff. But that was, like, holy shit, like, oh, I don't even know how to explain it. Just like the start of Caught Somewhere in Time, that like guitar harmony and the synth that starts, like that was literally like a fucking like I can think about it now and I'm just like, oh, it just fucking took me back to being a kid.
It was probably like a purge, like an enlightening experience. Like you said, the clouds were, the sea parted. You know,
yeah, definitely.
The sun and the moon, you could see the line between night and day. I know,
definitely. And
that's,
then,
that's music for you.
I remember at that point, because so I had mentioned to you that, you know, like my uncle was a record collector and I used to go to Ides all the time with him. And what he would do is usually he would take me record shopping with him. And like sometimes he would let me like get a record, but he kept all that stuff. And I remember calling him.
Okay.
And I was like, do you still have all of those, like all those records and stuff? And he was like, yeah, you can have them. So like at 16, my record collection got started with all of this stuff that like I picked out when I was a kid.
That's really
So I have
amazing.
like all of the, all of the old Slayer stuff, all of the Anthrax stuff, Megadeth, Metallica, Maiden,
there's people,
all that stuff.
Yeah. A lot older than you are that never had, and you've got it. But you got like, again, what are the, I mean, part of it is the unique experience of being introduced like by your parents and your uncle and like your family, because not everybody has a musical family, but I find people that are really musical, a lot of them got it from older brothers, sisters, uncles and aunts, record collections. Jesus, excuse me.
It's fascinating how many people I've had on the show over the years where it's just like, I didn't start listening to music until I was like 15 or 16.
That's wild.
And it's I know. What are you talking about? You know, like, you know, I went to my first concert when I was 17.
Judgment. Welcome to the
party, but
right?
It's just like, it's like my background, my come up, or whatever, it was just so different. Yeah. And it's like, I know that it was a very unique experience.
It's like, I'm picturing you like being in grade school and, you know, kids are bringing stuff for show and tell and you're like, all right. And I don't know, you know, because again, music spans time. So it's not uncommon it wouldn't be uncommon for somebody, like if you were in your first grade and show and tell is happening, public school, bring in whatever you want, and you bring in like
the Butchered a Birthday.
I don't know. I'll tell you what, that would be something. I'm thinking like an Edgar Winter record or, you know, BTO or something, whatever. It's like, hey, I really, really, really love this, you know, this David Bromberg record. So here we are, and people are like, who the hell's David Bromberg? You know, like totally like decades away. But that's like when you find music as a kid, it's just like, oh, and if somebody finds it at 15, 18, I mean, it's, geez, oh man, I'm like,
karate chopping.
I'm going to knock that right off of the,
that's okay.
Know, I'll pay for it.
No,
I'll have to work. No, I have to work for you because I don't have the money to pay. So
you're good.
I can't even replace my phone. So I'm not replacing a really expensive microphone. I'm just trying not to break it. But yeah, just sort of like, you know, again, if someone's 18 or 50, all of a sudden they decide they love music. Great. Come in, join it. It's awesome. But to have the experience of being that young and like I said, and then again, that really is like you were talking about, you had mentioned some bands that again were after my time, but I was aware of, you know, bands like Korn. And I remember when Korn kind of came on the scene and I was like, yeah,
I remember
this isn't for me, but I understand why people like it.
You know, it's funny. I have a very specific memory of Korn, in regards to it being the first time that, because Korn happened a little bit before Slipknot, but in the grand scheme of things, it was just a few years before. But whenever that first Korn record came out, there was this kid that lived upstairs from the apartment that my dad lived in. And, like, you know, he was probably, like, 17 or something. I was, like, 10, right?
Okay.
But, you know, he fucking skateboarded and all this stuff.
So
and
you loved him.
Oh, yeah, he was
you're
fucking
like,
cool.
Oh, what
but
is
he
doing
showed
right
me
now?
Korn.
I need to know.
In that first Korn record. And that shit was, like, I was like, what is this? I had never...
Was that, like, 94?
It was 94.
Okay.
It was like, I never heard... Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, I never heard anything like this.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I was like, Dad, you got to hear this. And he was just like, I don't know what this is. You know what I mean? Like, but he was cool about it. And honestly, like over time, like now, like if I were to like go hang out with my dad, like, you know, he'll be like listening to, he could be listening to Korn or Lamb of God, or like, he might know more about newer bands than I do. Like, he's really good at keeping up with stuff. He fucks with the music choice on the TV a lot. Do you know what I'm talking about? The TVs that they just play like the songs on the loop. Like, he has that, and every time I'm over there, it's always on. And he's like, you know, be like, yeah, have you heard this band? And it's like, my dad's like listening to Mastodon and stuff. I'm like, sick.
Your dad's been in it to win it since, like you said, he was the old Ides.
Yeah.
Which is the 1111? That's the new one, I think. The when it was 9, I think it was 9 something on Penn, and then it was on the north side originally. And I never got to experience the north side one. I did the old one up the street.
Yeah.
But your dad was there.
Totally.
Doing all of this.
Yeah.
So it's really amazing, but not surprising. You know, that sort of thought that you soften up as you get older. You don't. Some people do, but it's, you know, it might just be organic to their life or what they choose to hear. But there's, you know, when people... I heard. I'm so sorry.
You're good.
There were a couple of young people that I was in the presence of, and I don't want to get off topic of your dad or you at this point, but there were a couple of people I was in, you know, and they were kind of chuckling, and they, you know, they said, you know, they themselves, I'm thinking, I would put them in their mid-20s, right? You know, and they said, they were laughing and talking about it. They saw this old woman, old gray-haired woman. Hello. They're like laughing about how we saw this old gray-haired woman in a Motorhead shirt, and we were like, she's probably like, she was probably there in the 70s, definitely in the 80s. Where were you? Like, and again, you don't want to pull rank, but don't like think about it. Think about it. Like when you see somebody like your dad who was going to Ides and City Limits and had Butchered at Birth when you were 10 years old. You know what I mean? Like, of course, there's a possibility he might be like, I'm checking out the new Mastodon. It's just so funny to me how people,
but, you know, but if he
may not be in the front row, he might be in the front row.
We could bring this point back. I could tell you about my dad coming to a Grey Walker show. It's fucking hysterical.
Oh, well, has he you allowed this?
Oh yeah, he came to a Grey Walker show.
Okay.
He's fucking hitting the weed vapes with the hula hoop girls, falling asleep in his Bronco in the parking lot. He's fucking going.
Well, your dad is definitely, he sounds like a legend. You want to talk about a legend.
He came to party. He's a good dude.
Your dad, and then you were talking about your experience with Korn and the 17-year-old upstairs, and then you're like, what you had said, and I apologize, just to go back and to wrap it up, when you're like, I'm not sure about the bands, you know, that the 20-year-olds are listening to. It's the same thing. It's the same thing as Korn was with your dad, and your dad was, it's their experience coming into play.
Yeah, it's like Korn was with my dad, how Slipknot was with you,
exactly,
and now how I am with, like, I don't know, like Lorna Shore.
Okay.
You know, you know, which I don't know if you're attuned to that band at all.
I am not.
But they're like vaguely black metal, and they've also been played on like the NHL. Like during games.
Yeah, no, I've never heard them for sure.
Like, you know, like
I would have heard this comparison.
They've gotten like, you know, they're for like the level of exposure that they've gotten, they are very extreme. Like very extreme metal. And it's interesting to see them crossing these thresholds. It's interesting for them. It's interesting about society as a whole and like the acceptance of extreme music.
Sure, especially because when we know the origins, I love having discussions like Sharon and Matt and I were discussing black metal. None of us, it's not our first, you know, it's just wasn't, I didn't take to it. You know, I took to like doom and death metal of the genres at the time a lot more. It's here, it's unique, more power to it. It wasn't my thing. But, you know, and we were talking about the time and the place that we thought to find, you know, and we had everything from Venom to Bathory, And then I said, well, of course, are those things. But I said, it will always be, those we came up with, right? Like, again, the first time you heard Venom and you're just like, you know? And Bathory, obviously, more underground in comparison. But it was like, it's hard for me not to instantly go back to like 1990, 1989 to 1993, when it was getting, it was, when it was, people talk about Muscle Shoals blues. I'm like, well, then people think about certain regions or certain things, like Buffalo.
I already know what you're gonna say. This is really funny.
Well, I was gonna say like I don't know about younger people, but I will always consider Buffalo to be like a mecca of like I'll be like on the map for death metal. From a lot of the bands, some didn't last as long as others. But, there was a lot of death metal going on in Buffalo, and they would host the Day of Death, which was insane, and you would go, everybody would make a pilgrimage to do that. So I feel too, like sometimes I'll shoot specifically to, some of the colder regions, you know what I mean? Like, okay, you got Norway, obviously. I mean, that's pretty much, like that was, everything got kind of like defined by that. I don't think it should have been, but it just happened. A lot was happening in Norway in the early 90s.
Sure.
Not all of it good, but so it's just when we were talking, okay, so long story short, people like us, we still equate, again, that was during our time. So everything else that you're talking about, like the bands being played, did you say on the NHL?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Okay, so like that is mind blowing because my mind will always go back to that. But that is not discrediting all of the really awesome, hardworking bands that came after that. It just isn't something I would have never thought somebody would tell me. Oh, it's a borderline black metal band being played at a sporting event. A big sporting event.
Yeah.
Which is.
Interesting.
I mean, when we used to go see the Penguins, it was like Cotton Eye
Gary
Joe.
Glitter.
We'd be like it would be the third period at the Pens game, and we're like, fuck, we're like 30 seconds from Cotton Eye Joe. God, and be like, and it would come on, and we would just sit there like, what the hell?
But
like I'd rather hear the organist go nuts and play, bring the organist on.
But yeah, I think that I was gonna bring up something where I think that, kind of looping all of this discussion back to that point of like when people like see or hear something that they don't want to deal with, they're just kind of they push it. They push it away.
Yeah.
And I think that there is definitely a part of that. I could be I'm attuned with myself now and my mortality enough to understand that is what makes me uncomfortable about listening to younger bands.
Oh, okay.
For me personally, it is a mortality thing.
Sure.
And it also just being like, like it's like, I can't keep up with the kids. And like, but the
kids come to see you.
Yes. But that's the thing is like, I need to be,
and that's
I know you don't want to be a gatekeeper or anything like that.
No.
It's just so weird though, because it is a part of it like where like this isn't for me anymore. Not that I'm being explicitly pushed away, but I also feel like it's weird. It's weird being that like, it's like I'm the 40-year-old guy.
I think
at the show with all the 20-year-olds.
Sure. Well,
and it's just
I do.
It's strange.
It's strange.
Not that I'm unwelcome. It's just, it's I'm entering a new, as I continue to get older and experiences develop, it's just, it's interesting, but also like sitting down and talking and knowing like people like you is also incredibly like inspiring and just like comforting, because it's just like, there's no like metaphorical expiration date. It's like, if you're in this, you're in this. And like, we're all growing together, aging, time is inevitable.
Yes, it is.
And, you're never too old to do something. You're never too old to engage in the things that you love. No, the only person that could tell you that is yourself.
And you're never too old to start loving something again. You could be 60 years old and be like, what's this band Atrophy? It's like, bring it on. Come on in. I think coming in with a good attitude. Though, like anyone that comes in to take over something and to start lording over people, that is bad. That is, again, gatekeep. Like, why isn't this person, or being a mean person, about it. Which I don't feel at your shows ever, which have really good vibes. And I think are really diverse crowds too, age-wise and otherwise. But also, just having been on the planet longer, but then I look at what you're doing, and it's really inspirational to see somebody who is, and people that we know who kind of like, and I know it's probably bursting out of you. You probably can't not do it. Some people are like that. They're like, I have to do the thing. It's almost like the fire alarm in school. There's that one kid who's like, I know it's wrong, but I have to pull it. Like,
Sure.
And you watch that kid squirming until that kid pulls the fire alarm. Right or wrong, the kid had to do it. But to be like, get out there, like, have the courage to succeed, or maybe not, or try something new. And I think that inspires. There's also no age limit to being inspired to do something. It's not just inspiring the kids, because there are people that are older that, like you were talking about, going back. Okay, granted, you were still a teenager, but going back at that point to revisit and recollect all of your Iron Maiden records, And they I don't know who they are, but they say, like, target between when you're like 8 and 13 or something, and there within you will find your true self. Which in some ways, though, it's kind of cool because it predates the teenage years. So you just kind of like, what did you like? Did you like books? Did you like comic books? Did you love to rescue animals? Were you kind? Were you, were you like a daredevil on your bicycle? What is it? And I think you gotta remain true to that, and you will find inspiration by the people you watch who are doing it. They don't have to be in your generation. Like, it may not turn out the same if they're not, but it might be the difference between being like, oh man, Brian's got a podcast and he's doing this, and he made a movie when he was in high school, and he's going to have a showing of that movie for all of us to come and see somewhere.
I don't know about that one.
Maybe here. He's gonna let us all in on this because we're dying. We won't forget. But I mean, but maybe somebody will even just be like, why won't I do want to go see Iron Maiden this time around? I haven't seen them in 40 years. Like people inspire people of a different way. So, like,
you going in November?
I don't. Well, I'd love to, but I don't have plans to yet. I think I will try to get there somehow, though.
Yeah.
I was at the last one, and it just gets more fun and more fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember I didn't see Iron Maiden when I was super young. I think I was 18 or was I 17? And I saw them at the arena. But the Civic Arena was split when that was still existed, because I didn't sell many tickets.
Yeah.
But it was the Seventh Son of a Seventh Son tour.
Fuck yeah.
And Frehley's Comet opened up, which was, I mean, you gotta love Ace Frehley.
Yeah.
So at least we do, But at the time, I was kind of like, all right, Ace, like, get to Maiden, you know what I mean? And now I'm like, damn, what, like I paid attention, because at that point, when you love music, you were like dying to see the opening act, under most circumstances, because you're just like, give me everything. I saw Poison opening up for Quiet Riot on the Quiet Riot 3 tour. I think Look What the Cat Dragged In was out, but it wasn't big, and none of the songs were big. But I was in high school, and we went to a meet and greet.
Wow. No way.
But Poison wasn't there. It was Quiet Riot that was there. And I loved, you know what I mean? Like, I think Chuck Wright took over for Rudy Sarzo on that record as a bass player. And I thought, I was like, Rudy Sarzo, I want to be Rudy Sarzo, because I just started playing bass. So I was like, he wasn't there. It was still cool. It was still fun. Carlos Cavazo. I mean, that was, for a teenage kid, that was a big deal, but then we went and Poison opened up, and they were so, colorful and fluffy, and they were so, and I was just like, I was like looking at them, and they were so pink, and I was like, I love these guys. I'm like, oh my God, these guys are like the best band in the whole world ever. This band is better than the Beatles. No, I did love them though, and I went out and bought the record, and I will defend that record until the day that I die. I still love that record. But anyway, Maiden, I'm sorry, but it was kind of cool because seeing them then, and obviously at a different stage, you know, different eras, because they've had so many eras and stages, but just going to see them in November, like it just gets more fun and more fun because it just is all crowd participation at this time.
Yeah.
You know, it's like all killer, no filler, you know what I mean? And it's just everybody's singing and it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to make it about me again.
No, that's okay.
Somehow we went into Ace Frehley.
I honestly feel bad that that our 95 minutes that we've just recorded wasn't more about you.
Oh. No, it should be. I told Matt, I said, if he asks me any questions about me, I'm going to ask him about him because he's far more interesting and does more. Be like, let's talk about you, Brian. You do way more. You're far more relevant. You work harder. You're better. Everything you do. Let's talk about you. So.
Well, maybe we'll have to do we'll have to do all that another time.
I think I'm definitely down. I'd like to ask you. I want to ask you. I know that you do through your podcast answer questions, but you do a ton. And, I said the shows that you do are really super fun to be at. And I mean that in a way. I don't mean fun like, oh, it's fun. I mean, it's fun. Like it's watching everybody play and everybody's great. And, you know, it's a talented group of people, but it's a welcome space for a lot of, you know what I mean? It's a good vibe. You guys, everything that you do brings a good vibe to the room.
Well, thank you. That's really nice.
Yeah. I was like the show that you guys were willing to play at the Shred Shed. And I was like, that was one of my favorite shows. Just a vibe, everybody, other than me messing up your lights because Jonathan's like, you're going to do lights. I was like, Jonathan.
They were not messed up at all.
Well, they went completely off halfully through your set.
That's okay. It was a dramatic effect.
I'm killing it for.
Dramatic effect, you know.
It was dramatic. But, I mean, you guys stand alone on it. The lights are just a nice added touch.
Yeah,
so obviously, you know,
it's the salt and pepper.
But it was. I just saying it just was like it was a nice vibe. The people that came, it brought a nice vibe to the place.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, it was really fun. Looking forward to doing it again. And I'm sorry for eating up so much time talking. We talked about poison a lot.
You're literally my guest. You're supposed to be talking.
Well, yeah, well.
We'll talk more again sometime.
Talk about you.
Well, I mean, with all of that being said, we are gonna wrap this thing up. There's so much about you that we didn't talk about that we should have, but that's okay. I will say that I think a lot of the people that are listening to this episode may know you to some degree anyways, so maybe we don't need to get into the whole Spider-Man origin story of Metal Mary.
Oh, that's who that weird old person that we'll see at these shows. That's who that is. I was wondering.
No, you have.
I always thought it was someone's grandmother.
You have a lot of fascinating stories, I'm sure, and we'll get into it some other time. We'll do a part 2.
500, and thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Seriously,
I am. I was all nervous because I'm like, why would they? But thank you, and thanks, guys.
Yes,
we'll keep away from the camera.
Hey, with all of that being said, I'll be back again next week with another episode 501, baby. We're on to another 500. That's the start.
And you know I'm looking forward to Mr. Moma.
So yeah, his episode will have already been out before yours.
Yes.
So
Yes,
but
I look forward to them all. Everybody's great. It's such a pleasure to see the diversity of people that you bring on in the bands and the genres and the artists. Totally fun. Great way to get to know people. It's so weird how you live in a city that's of our size and you can't get everywhere. It's nice to know who's out there.
Definitely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, the main reason that I like continue to do this is because like it's the only way that I know how to like really stay connected with so much different stuff. And it's cool because like people will come on and people will hit me up that I've never heard of. And then that ends up just being like a gateway to like a whole nother weird scene of like a whole pocket of other cool bands that are doing something that like
it's wild.
I'm not connected with, but I want to be.
Absolutely.
So-
And it's nice to know what's out there, you know, and to look even from afar, even if your ship's passing and you're like, good, keep it up. You know, it's like, sweet. Cool.
Definitely.
It is good. So thank you again. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys.
And yeah, with all of that being said, I'll be back again next week. Same time, same place, same channel. You know the drill. My name is Brian Sykes-Howell. Start the Beat is the podcast. 2024 is the year. And until next time, take care of yourselves. Take care of the people around you. And peace out. We did it. That was a podcast. Woo! Thank you so much.
You're still recording, aren't you?
I am, of course.